Video reference: Hatsukaichi City, Hiroshima, Japan. This story takes us to Hiroshima, Japan. You may have only heard about this city from its past international conflicts. But as the years went by, they recovered from nothing to a bustling downtown area. Although the city is not as common of a tourist city compared to Tokyo or Kyoto, Hiroshima is not short of beautiful landscapes and amazing food. Satomi Kitaguchi. It was a warm autumn day on October 25, 2004. People were going to and from work. Students were going to school and from school. It was just your average day in Hiroshima. That afternoon, 17-year-old Satomi Kitaguchi, who was a second-year student at Hatsukaichi High School, was returning home from school. And as it was exam season, Satomi would be returning home earlier than usual right after finishing her exam. Murder. Satomi's younger sister and grandmother were downstairs in the living room watching TV until all of a sudden they heard a scream coming from upstairs. They hurried upstairs to Satomi's room. And when they opened the door, they saw her lying face down in a pool of blood. The suspect, who was still in the room, charged at them, chasing them both down the stairs. Satomi's sister made it all the way to a neighboring florist's shop and begged for help. Unfortunately for Michiyo, at 72 years of age, it was difficult to outrun the intruder. She was chased down and stabbed 4 times. Michiyo collapsed on the floor, and the intruder ran. With what little strength Michiyo had left, she was able to make a phone call to the police. Investigation. Family. The police arrived and found both Michiyo and Satomi lying unconscious on the floor. Although they were both rushed to the hospital, Satomi ultimately died from her injuries. She was stabbed over 10 times with a knife. Luckily for her grandmother, she didn't suffer any life-threatening injuries, and was able to regain consciousness and make a steady recovery. During the attack, Satomi's sister and grandmother had a brief encounter with the suspect. They described the man to have short brown hair, slender eyes, pimples, and a large build. In coordination with the police, they were able to get a facial composite based on their testimony. The police believed that this would be an open and shut case. They had fingerprints, DNA, shoe prints and a face composite. Satomi's relationships prior to the incident was their key focus during the investigation. They talked to her family, classmates, school officials, but none of them had a testimony that would lead to what happened that night. Years went by and the case went cold with absolutely no progress. The DNA evidence wasn't useful at the time, as the suspect's fingerprint and DNA did not match with anyone in the police database. Satomi's father in particular was especially vocal throughout all these years. He worked hard to remind the public of this case by handing out flyers at shopping centers and even starting a blog about his daughter's murder. The family decided to give a reward of 3 million yen, which approximates to $26,000 USD. To anyone who presents information leading to an arrest. This money was meant to be given to Satomi to help with her college fees. Time skip. Incident. The police received a call from an individual who claimed that his superior at a construction company he worked at had physically assaulted him. The name of his superior was Manabu Kashima, 35 years old, who lives in Ube City, Yamaguchi Prefecture. Employees claimed that in the past, he would beat up his subordinates when he was in a bad mood. But most employees were too afraid to report anything about him. The police had to collect fingerprints, as it was standard procedure whenever a report is made. Kashima's fingerprints were now in the police database. The police ran a scan of his fingerprints. and a match was triggered. The fingerprints matched the ones collected after the murder of Satomi Kitaguchi. And finally, after over a decade, there was a breakthrough in the case. Confession and conviction. On April 13, 2018, the police arrested Manabu Kashima for the murder of Satomi Kitaguchi. Kashima was charged with sexual assault and murder. The evidence against him was overwhelming and he ended up pleaded guilty to all the charges against him. Kashima was born in Shimonoseki City to a family of 4, moved to Ube City for school, and started a job at a metal processing company in Haji City. At the time of the incident, he was living alone in a dormitory near where he worked. One day he felt frustrated about things that happened at work, so he left his home to go to Akihabara, Tokyo. On his way to Tokyo, he crossed by Hiroshima, and that was where Kashima's intention to only run away changed. In Hiroshima, Kashima saw Satomi walking home from school and began following her. When Satomi arrived home, she left the front door unlocked, allowing Kashima to follow her inside. Following her upstairs and finding Satomi lying on her bed listening to music. Before Kashima could approach her, she tried to slip past him and run downstairs, but was caught. He began trying to take her clothes off, but was unable to as Satomi fought back the best she could. Kashima got increasingly agitated and finally snapped. He pulled out his knife and stabbed her multiple times. That is when Satomi's family heard the screams. Kashima was sentenced to life in prison. And the family as well as the community was able to finally feel some relief from the closing of this case. Satomi's father commented that all he felt was happiness that the culprit was caught, and wished for more unsolved cases in Hiroshima to be resolved. Satomi's sister expressed the amount of pressure she felt being the only person who saw the criminal on that day, and the guilt she would feel if she ever forgot what she saw. She was able to endure it all these years, and is just glad that she was not caught on that day as well.